Welcome to the Present Fathers Podcast. This is the show that focuses on climbing the mountain of fatherhood together. We believe that dads matter. That's why this show is for you. So gear up, dads. Get ready. It's time to start climbing. Hello and welcome to the Present Fathers Podcast. Our guest tonight is Drew Camp. Drew is a husband, father, and he is a combat veteran. He is also the founder and the CEO of the Epic Dad Company. His mission is to change the world by creating epic dads. Drew, welcome to the show, brother. How you doing?
I'm doing great, man. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, man. I'm really looking forward to it. I'm really glad we made this work. I know we had some scheduling conflicts, and yesterday was my anniversary too, so kind of squeezing this all in. I'm looking forward to learning from you, man. So
for sure, man.
Why don't we kick it off with just start a little bit about your family and kind of the basics of who is Drew.
Yeah, I mean, so first off, I'm a husband and father. I think that's first, right? So been married, will be 13 years in November. So don't know why, but she's sticking around. So we'll celebrate that in November. And then I've got 3 kids. So I've got 2 girls, 7 and 5, and then I've got a son, Murphy, who's 19 months now. So that's first off, just family man, first. And then, like you said, I'm the founder of TEDCO, or the Epic Dad Company, and that's not my full-time gig. Yet we're growing a lot, and I'm sure we can talk about that and the growth of it and our mission. But that's about it for me, man. It's just dadding it up, trying to grow the business and trying to change the culture.
I love it. I think this is gonna be fun for us because I think you and I and the rest of us here are all kind of aligned on very similar goals. So this is gonna be exciting. Let's go into your early life a little bit, kind of where you grew up, and then I know you joined the Army. I assume relatively young. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I grew up near Atlanta, Georgia. So a couple of Braves fans on the call, so shout out. So I grew up in Atlanta. My family, was incredible growing up, to be honest with you. So my mom and dad are still married. They're coming up on 50 years. So great example, of what, a husband-wife relationship should look like and how you need to treat your wife and things like that. And, grew up playing sports. So was a big baseball, football guy. Throughout middle school, high school. And then I actually had the opportunity to go play baseball in college. So I went to D2 school, Valdosta State, down in South Georgia. But it was about as far away as I could get from my parents and still get the Hope Scholarship in the state of Georgia. So I chose Valdosta.
Nice.
And it was good, man. It was a good experience down there. But I think, like what I took away from my dad, because it's obviously a dad podcast, is really a few like big lessons, big takeaways. And one is just around work ethic. So if you were to ask my mom, like, to describe my dad in one word, it would be like relentless. And I feel like that's something that I definitely took from him. And just growing up and seeing him when I was about, I want to say 7 or 8 or so, he left corporate America, started his own company, and had to work all the time. So even though, maybe he had to travel a lot and he wasn't present all the time, I was able to see that, right, of, hey, that work ethic of going out and getting it and making it happen, was just kind of instilled in me early on. And then, secondly, I kind of already mentioned it, right, was just the prime example to me of what a husband and wife relationship should look like. So not a lot of guys have that opportunity. So definitely blessed there.
Yeah, that's the dream, right? That's what we're aiming for here, and to try and make that occur more often. So I'm really glad that you had that experience, and congrats to your parents on almost 50 years, and to you as well with your upcoming anniversary. So
for sure, man, appreciate it. But I mean, life wasn't perfect. I want to say like my dad and I's relationship now, I would say is good. And my dad has always been my biggest advocate, but I feel like most of us have, I guess, like, mixed feelings about our fathers, right? Just to say it at the least, right? And with my dad, it's like, there was always this path that I was kind of expected to go down. And with that work ethic came, hey, you're going to go to college, you're going to get a corporate job, you're going to work 40 years, and kind of like that's the path that was set before me, right? And so, what I ended up doing is kind of like every son does at some point, is rebel a little bit. And so my journey into the Army, I think, was that rebellion of like, hey, I just got my degree, and then, all right, cool, I'm going to go join the Army, and my family's like,
nice.
what are you talking about? And it's something that I think I knew I was going to do all along, but my folks didn't think I was serious about it. So I ended up graduating, and then I enlisted with the degree instead of commissioning right away. And I said, hey, hey mom, hey dad, I'm going to the army. I'm going to be enlisted. I'm going to go do infantry. And they're like, what are you talking about? Like just think I was the craziest thing ever. But I
Every
think the big
mom's
thing for
nightmare.
me, yeah, the big thing for me was like, I want to chart my own path, right? And so I think that's where some of the friction with my dad and I still to this day comes into play sometimes. It's like, you know, I, I I want to chart my own path, and I want to use the lessons that he's given me to go out there and make stuff happen on my own. And it may not be the path that he wants for me, um, but it's the path that I've chosen. So I think that there's definitely some friction there. I think we've overcome most of that. But yeah, growing up, it's nice to have that, loving family and support. But at the same time, it's difficult because you want to go out and prove yourself as a man, right? And I think a lot of that has to go back to, again, our relationship with our father, and like, you know, is what I'm doing to make him proud? Is what I'm doing what I want to do, or is it to make my dad proud? So I think there's a little bit of that.
Yeah, and it could be both, right? Um,
Hmm.
Actually, there could be a whole lot of facets for why you joined the army, but maybe we'll get to that later. So why don't you tell us a little bit about, so obviously basic training, all that kind of stuff. Did you go straight to the 82nd? Was that your first unit, or?
Yeah, so I'll tell you the whole story, man. It's crazy. So I met my wife in college, and let her know my plans about joining the army, which
And what'd
she
she say?
she did not like. Um, but was very upfront about it. Like, hey, this is gonna happen. Like, this is my plan. This is my goal. And if we're gonna stay together, like, I need you to be okay with that. So we ended up breaking up probably like 5 or 6 times, I think, during college, just based off of that. And so it didn't come as a surprise when I joined. And ultimately, we ended up getting married like right after airborne school. So she was obviously along for the ride, right, and supportive. But my initial plan was to commission, was to go in as a infantry officer. But OCS, Officer Candidate School, at the time, 2010, had a pretty big backlog. And so I think it was about a week, over a year wait time, like dwell time to like go to OCS. And I was working at a warehouse, like boxing stuff up at the time because it was 2009, like the crash, and I couldn't find a job. And so I was like, you know what, like I'm just gonna go in, like I'll figure it out, when I get there. So I ended up enlisting. Yeah, went down to Sand Hill, Fort Benning. It's like the worst place in the world. George, I'm sure you're probably familiar.
I didn't
um,
go to basic. I've been to airborne school, but yeah, I know
okay,
exactly what
okay.
you're talking about.
Well, yeah, man, it was like it's the most fun that you never want to have again, is basic training. And so did that whole jazz. And then during basic training, again, my plan was to commission at some point in the near future. And I ended up like graduating top of the class, and they were like, hey, do you want to go to airborne school? I was like, I mean, sure, why not? Right? Like, sounds cool. We'll go jump out of planes. And so, yeah, did airborne school down there. And then ended up graduating airborne, and half of our class got sent to Italy for the 173rd, and half got sent to Bragg for the 82nd. And I was really hoping to get Italy, but I didn't. So I got shipped up to North Carolina, up to Fort Bragg. Did 4 years up there. One tour to Afghanistan in 2012. Was with 4th Brigade, 2508 PIR, Parachute Infantry Regiment, which is disbanded now, and they've kind of gone back to one of the other brigades. But I mean, yeah, good experience overall. On the enlisted side, in the military, and then it sounds like too, George, we were in Afghanistan like at the same time.
Yeah, I think I was there. I got there November 2012. Got home like almost August. It was like July 29th or something. 2013. I was in Kunar.
Okay, gotcha, man. Yeah, we missed each other just a little bit. Then we got in country like right at the beginning of February, and I think we ripped out end of August or beginning of September, something like that. So we missed each other by just a little bit. But we were in Kandahar province, like, I don't know, 30 minutes or so west of Kandahar City. And so, like, the Arghandab River, comes down underneath Kandahar. And so we were kind of like, RAO is basically from the Arghandab River, or from Highway 1 to the Arghandab River, which is about 10 miles or so. And then we're kind of catty cornered right there by Helmand, and then Panjway to the south. So it was, good experience. We can talk all about that, if you want to, but ended up doing that deployment, getting back to the 82nd. Op tempo was extremely tough with the 82nd. I'm sure it was with the 101st as well. It sounds like you went to JRTC like 30 times.
Yeah,
Um,
practically live there. Yep.
but yeah, thankfully I never had to go there, man. We did NTC out in Fort Irwin, the National Training Center, out in California, which was a different experience, I'm sure, than being in Fort Polk, but an experience in of itself, for sure, when it's like 110 degrees and you're in the Mojave Desert and all that kind of stuff. But
Yeah, I guess just to wrap up kind of initial Army stuff would just be, so you were married. Did you become a father while you were still in the Army, or was the decision kind of, hey, we want to start a family, let's leave the Army? Was that kind of the decision point there?
yeah, I mean the decision point was multifactored for sure. So again, I wanted to go to OCS and commission initially. I never got that opportunity to. Um, it's the way the cookie crumbles, right? But it was, hey, a command team that said, sure, we'll let you go to OCS after this. And then a new command team comes in and said, no, we'll let you go after this. And then we ended up deploying, and then we ended up coming back. And so the decision for me to get out was really on deployment. Yeah, there is a lot of great leaders in the military, right? There's a lot of great ones, but there are also a lot of not great leaders in the military. And some of the experiences I had on deployment just really made me think like I want to go start my civilian career. Like I've checked the box. I feel like I've served my country. I want to go do different things. And the decision point for me was I was operating as a squad leader, as a E4, as a specialist squad leader in Afghanistan, and wasn't able to get promoted. So it was
Because
basically
of
just
like
having,
time and grade and stuff, or
well, not even that, was just hanging over my head a reenlistment.
oh,
We'll promote you if you reenlist.
gotcha.
And I was like, no, like I'm not gonna do it. Like I got a degree, like I'll be fine. And so I'll never forget. Like the decision was made for me when I had the conversation with our first sergeant, and I'll leave him unnamed. His recruiting efforts failed, to say the least. But it was, hey, we really think you should reenlist. And I was like, no, like I'm going to go start my civilian career. And I'll never forget this conversation. It was like, hey, you're gonna be fucking flipping burgers at McDonald's if you get out of the Army. And I was like, no, I was like, I got a marketing degree. Like, I'm going to be fine. I'll go to grad school. I'll get a good job. Like, I'm going to be fine. So that kind of made the decision point for me. It was like, these guys aren't really looking out for what's best in my interest. Like, they're looking out for what's best with the Army. And like, there's something to be said for that as well, right? You're part of an organization. You need to, selflessly serve. But at the same time, was just tired of getting shit on, man, to be honest with you, just from bad leaders. And so that was the decision point for me, was to get out. And we had intentionally decided not to have kids until, we made that decision. And so ended up getting out. We moved back to Georgia, and I just went to work, man. So I went to work for a company first I went to work for my dad. And he had a sales rep company that I worked for. And I was only there for, I want to say like 9 months to a year. And it was that same kind of thing, right? Of like falling under the path of your dad. And so I was there for a little bit, and I was like, this is just not for me, man. I got to chart my own path. And so, we had some words there for sure. My dad was actually ready to hand the business over to me. And I said, no, I need to go do something on my own, which is a tough decision, but I think it was the right decision. And so I ended up going to work for a company called Deloitte Consulting. So I was with Deloitte for a few years, on the consulting side in their federal practice. And then at the same time, decided to go back to grad school. So I went to University of Georgia, to study business. I got my MBA there. And then I'll never forget too, like I was at Deloitte still, and my main client was the Centers for Disease Control. And I knew the whole time I was like, I'm just like not having the impact I want to have in the world, like where I'm at. And like I just wrapped up business school, and I'm doing all this federal work. And I'll never forget the moment I was in a closet at the CDC working on a project for one of the offices there. And I was literally like writing a hurricane relief grant. I was just like in a corner, like typing it. And I was just hit me. I was like, what am I doing here? Like, like I'm not using my degree. I'm not passionate about this. So I ended up leaving there, and then I went into industry and went to work for Home Depot. Has a big office in Atlanta. So I worked at Home Depot's corporate office for several years, up until recently. And then, yeah, we decided to, the time was right to have kids once I was out of the military. And I think it was, well, I mean, I know the day. It was April 15th of 2016, where we had our first child, our first daughter, Porter. And so that was a huge turning point for me, just as a man to become a father, which we can dive into, as deep as you want to.
Yeah. So appreciate you sharing all that. And I actually wanted to just kind of say one thing. So one, I'm really sorry you had that experience with your leadership, kind of playing the game of like, dangling it over your head. I actually had the exact opposite experience, and I think that that was one of the biggest blessings and the biggest lessons I learned. Um, was that I'm very fortunate. I had some really good leaders who didn't play that game with anyone really, and if it was better for that person to advance their career and have just unique opportunities, they didn't play the game of like, oh well, we need you here, because at the end of the
Mhm,
day, it's still the army, right? If they're going somewhere else in the army, it's still the army.
mhm.
So I'm
Yep.
extremely fortunate that, and I want to make that clear to like anyone listening to this who's maybe considering that, or you're maybe in leadership. Um, if you play that game, you're only going to drive people out of the military,
Yep.
because what you're saying to them is that you're let's be honest too. If you're lower enlisted, like getting a promotion, that's a lot of dollars every month. Okay, from like E4 to E5
Mhm.
or E5 to 6, that's a big move for a guy. That opens up a lot of possibilities. So if you're going to play that game, you're literally holding back a lot of money from them every year. So I mean, just think of how shady that is. So I won't go off on a huge tangent, but it really boils my blood to hear like leaders doing that to subordinates, because it's just a crappy game. And if that happened in the civilian section or sector, you'd quit your job that day, So
Yeah.
I don't know why people
Yeah.
think in the military that you can do that.
Yeah. And it's,
It's not helping anyone.
like I said, I had examples of great leadership and examples of bad leadership. So like I'm not like sorry, that happened, right? It was, it is what it is, and I took away what I could from it. And if anything, I'm almost grateful for that as well, because I've gone on to use that as a chip on my shoulder, to go, excel in the military, even further, right? And so, that same first sergeant, again, that I'll keep unnamed, I've had to hold myself back from doing multiple things, of like when I graduated, with my MBA, of like shooting him out an invitation, to the graduation. And then, I wanted to shoot him out an invitation to OCS, when I graduated OCS and got commissioned, and have him be my first salute. But I didn't, because I'm a bigger man, right? And then now I just recently took company command, which has been my goal from basic training. Was
Hey,
like,
congrats, man.
thanks, dude.
Yeah.
Was like get company command, make captain, and like that was like literally when I was in basic training. They have the little books that they give you that like whenever you have downtime, if you're not reading it, you're going to be doing push-ups. And so I'd have it open, and I remember I may still have it like in a tough box somewhere, but like I had the rank of captain circled, and I just put like get here, right? And I was like, that is my
Yeah.
goal. And so
I
like
love it.
if like I said, if anything, I see that as an opportunity to have a chip on my shoulder just to drive me even further.
Isn't that
Yeah,
great
man.
when your haters are your fuel and you're like, all
Yeah,
right,
bro.
cool. Yeah, thanks for being my hater
Right.
because
You gotta go to the
It's the
dark
best,
side.
man.
yeah, exactly. That's
Hey,
awesome.
real quick.
So,
the
so
best.
I'm actually not even a captain yet.
Okay, so you're first lieutenant.
I've been a first lieutenant for 5 years now.
Oh, dang.
And
So you're like gonna
we can
pick it up.
go into that as well,
It's the guard.
if you want to. No,
Yeah.
it's not the guard. It's not the guard.
Really? Okay.
No. So it is COVID-19, is what that is.
Oh, it screwed up your
Um,
whole class cycle and everything.
no, man. So I'm a refusal. And so
Oh,
I got
gotcha.
kicked out of the army for almost a year.
And then they brought you
Um,
back.
and then they brought me back. Yeah.
Yeah, they begged you back, I'm sure.
They begged me back,
Yeah.
and I said no. And then they said, "We'll give you company command." And I said, "All right, let's do it." So yeah, that messed it up. So I've been a first lieutenant for like
Good
5
for you,
years
dude.
now.
Stick to what you
That was
believe
a
in,
tough
man.
decision, man. Tough decision.
That was a hard
you
time
know,
for a lot of people, man. It's a really weird time, man. I can tell you,
We'll
my
talk
wife and I are in
offline
the
about
medical
that one.
field.
Yeah,
Yeah, I was
sure.
gonna say my wife are in the medical field, and I kind of feel like I was forced into some things, and I get it. That's all I'm gonna say.
Yeah. We can talk offline on that all you want to, George. But that was the big that was the big turning point for me, and like the pivotal point for me to start voicing my opinions a little bit more, right? And knowing that I have things to say, but I have been very reserved. I've been passive, just because I've been in the corporate sphere, I've been in the military, and like I feel like it's not my place to say something, right? But with the whole 2020 beyond, and a lot of the experiences that I had that I didn't agree with, and really seeing like the decline in our culture from my perspective, especially for men, that really led me to found the company, Tedco, and really start to get my voice out there. And so it's been a journey for sure. Like I started my podcast in gosh, I don't even remember what it was. 2021, end of 21, I think. And for me, that was I had just been kicked out of the army, or about to get kicked out of the army, and I was like, dude, I'm just gonna start saying what needs to be said, and let the chips fall where they may. Like I've got to have conviction. I've got to stand on principle, and say what needs to be said.
I mean, I couldn't agree more, man. As fathers, we're the leaders not only of our family, but I mean, generations to come. I mean, we
Or our
had Nick
communities.
Freitas on recently.
We should be active in our communities.
Mhm.
Yeah, and he actually made that point, is that we could be the starting point for generations to come. And that kind of profoundly hit me, and that's one of the things I love about this podcast is we are learning from so many different stoic men and good men who are leaders. And I have to say, man, like as a father, we need to be speaking up more. We need to stand up to this cancel culture and quit worrying about what other people think and start leading by example, because this is what our children are watching us do on a day-to-day basis. And if we're weak, they're going to be weak. If we fold under pressure, they're going to fold under pressure. Like we're literally the people who are the pillars of their strength. And if we crumble, so do they. And when you said that, it kind of hit home a little bit. 'Cause I think often about my son and how I want him to be, since I'm about to have a little girl as well. And I want him to be able to look after my girl just in case, because I mean, I'd always be around. And I want him to know, like, hey, stand firm in what you believe in. Do not let other people push you around. If this is what you feel, go for it. I don't care what the cost. I'll always believe in that. I'll always support you, and so will your mom and our families. But like, as men, I think that's something we really need to start doing, especially right now in today's time and today with what's going on with this world. We have to take a stance and do something and stand
Yeah,
up for what we believe in.
100% agree, Justin. And more than that too, it's more than your son just standing up, for what's going to be his sister and his mom, but it is him looking at you and knowing that you stood on principle and made the tough decision, right, and didn't fold under pressure was something that you were convicted about. And that is what really drives me at the end of the day, is like, can I look in the mirror and be honest with myself about, if my son looks at me and looks at the decisions that I make and the path that I'm on, is he going to be proud of his father, right, when I reach the end of my life? And that really drives me. Yeah, I'll get emotional thinking about it, man. It like everything changed for me, like when I had a son. And not like nothing against my girls, right? I love my girls to death. But at the end of the day, I could still kind of hide in the corner, right? And I could still have some vices. I could still not live up to principle and like the man that I knew I was going to be with my daughters. I could hide that. But the second that I found out I was having a son, I had to look in the mirror and say, what type of man am I? And what type of man am I going to become in order because I know my son is going to become that man, right? And that to me just hit hard. And so I really had to take up, like I said, a hard look in the mirror and say, the decisions that I'm making right now, especially during that time we were just talking about, right? Those tough decisions, was when my son grows up and becomes a man and he looks at his father on his deathbed, is he going to be proud of the decisions that his father made, right? Is he going to know that his dad stood on principle? He stood on conviction. He said what he believed. And not only did he say what he believed, but he acted on what he believed. And to me, man, that was just like the pivotal point for me. It was like finding out I'm having a son. It just changed everything for me.
All right. So Drew, you got me thinking a lot about feeling useful and being useful as men. It's really interesting how our culture has kind of taught many of us that we're not useful as men, right? Women can do everything. They take care of the kids. They, take care of everything. So what do we do as men? And I'm reading Arnold Schwarzenegger's book, Be Useful, right now. And he talks a lot about that, how if we don't feel useful, if we don't feel like we have a purpose, then we're not going to be very happy. And so that's one thing that's amazing about a dad, is you immediately are useful and you have a purpose no matter what, and I think a lot of childless men don't have that, kind of built in. So what do you think makes you most useful as a dad? How do you feel like you're the biggest asset to your family?
Yeah, great question. I'll honestly take it back to the army and getting out, and kind of like preface where I'm coming from with this. So the transition out of the military for a lot of guys is very tough, and I was no exception to that. And I think the reason why, yeah, George raised his hand, right? The reason why is because we wrap so much of our identity around that. And then we move on to the next thing, but we're still saying, I'm still a soldier. I'm still a soldier. Right. That's what I do. But so like and I'll take it back even further. So, back to deployment in 2012. So we are the AO that we were in Southern Afghanistan was not that kinetic as far as like there weren't that many firefights. Like there were some, but it wasn't like a daily thing. But what we had to worry about was dismounted IEDs, and so like pressure plate IEDs. And you kind of like would think that, hey, if all the time you're having to walk in a file, formation and like put chalk down on the ground and make sure you're not stepping across the chalk, and like it would just be like in your mind constantly, right? Of like, holy shit, I need to be like super vigilant here. Over time it just kind of fades, right? You like get used to it. You're like, well, fuck it. If I step on an IED, like whatever, and as shitty as that sounds, like that's the truth, right? You just like lose hope and like lose like purpose, right? And so I think when I got out of the military, it was that same kind of thing, right? It was like, I just didn't have a purpose. I didn't know what I was doing. I was just going to work, and didn't really have like a guiding principle or guiding light or guiding values. But like that like depression, that lack of purpose, like changed immediately when I had my kid. Like I'll never forget, we didn't find out if it was gonna be a boy or a girl. And so like she came out as a girl, and I was like, holy shit, man. Like I am a dad now. Like this is my purpose. Right. And so I honestly forgot the question, because I'm just like going down the rabbit hole here. But as far as like was it about purpose and being useful as a dad?
Yeah.
Right?
What is it that makes you most useful as a, not even as a dad, as a member of your family?
Got it. So, so why I went down that tangent to begin with was really around purpose and around vision. Because I think that the dad's role in a family, there's a lot of things, right? It's more than just taking out the trash. There's a lot more to that. And I think one of the things that you need to do as a dad is lead your family and craft the vision for your family about where they're going. And so many dads are guilty of this. And I was for a long time, and still am in some instances, is not having a clear vision, a clear roadmap of like where we're going. Right. And that's our job as the dad, is to paint that vision of the future that we're traveling to as a family, and to take them along the journey. Right. So that's number one, is like having a clear vision for the family. And then number two, I would say, is probably values. Right. So it's our job to not only have personal values that we live by and standards we live by, but is how can we craft those family values, right? So that our children and our wives can start to identify with those values, and we can start to reinforce those values to our kids and our wives. And so like we do something in the camp household that I love. And we have come up with our family value set. And I would encourage everyone to do this if you haven't already. And like ours is super simple because my kids are young. They're 7, 5, and 19 months. So like as they get older, we'll probably stack some more values on, right? But I want them to be able to remember these. And so for the camps, it's super simple. It is the camps are kind, the camps are strong, and the camps are brave. And the camps do the hard things, we do the right things, and we do the fun things. And those are our values. That's it. And what's awesome about this is like now that so it's my job to create those values, right? And I love this. Yeah, see, George, you got it down there. That's awesome. So it's our job to not only create these values, but then it's our job to live by those values, right? To be the example of those values, but then also to find opportunities that we can reinforce that value set with our kids. And so like we do something at dinner time, we do something at bedtime that's going to help them reinforce those. So perfect example of this, and I love this example, is we went down to Punta Cana this summer for family vacation, and there was like a little water park there for kids. But some of the rides were kind of big, right? They had like a straight down one. It's not like whitewater or anything that's like 100 feet high, but still, like for a little kid, it's pretty tall. And my oldest daughter, Porter, was definitely scared to go down it. She came out to me and said like, "Hey, I want to go down it." She said, "But I'm really scared too." And literally the only thing that I said to her, right, was, "Hey, well, you're at camp, right?" And she said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, camps are brave." And then that was it. And that was the end of the conversation. And literally about 20 minutes later, she came and found me. And she said, "Hey, I went down the straight down slide, Dad." Like she just went by herself. Right. And I was like, "You went by yourself? Are you serious?" I was like, "Why didn't you come and get me?" And she was like, "Yeah, I went down because the camps are brave." She was like, "I was just going up the stairs and I was just saying like, the camps are brave, the camps are brave, the camps are brave." Right. And she went down it. And so it was so awesome because like now she's starting to identify herself as a brave person, right? Because the camps are brave, and then now she's done a brave thing. So like she's starting to stack these little wins and these little like votes for her identity, that she is a brave person. And so I think that is a huge thing for us as dads, is to really craft like the value set and the standards that we live by, reinforce those with our children, but then also live the example of those values too.
Oh, I love that plan. Yeah, Matt Boudreau talked about the same thing on a podcast last month where what do Boudreau men do? We do this, we
Yeah.
do that. And so I've been using that with my son, and it's so much better than saying, well, you shouldn't do that because it's not
Yeah.
nice. When you
Yeah.
say, are
Right.
we burning men? Yeah, we're burning men. Okay, we're brave, we're strong. So I'm
Yep.
a huge believer in that. That little shift in language makes a huge difference.
Yeah. And then
It's
two, sorry, go ahead.
well, I was just to say you also have to live by like you were saying, you have to live by it.
Yeah.
So, Nick Freitas said that if your kids see you doing the wrong thing, they also have to have the right to kind of respectfully call you out on not living to the values. That way it's not just an arbitrary set of rules that it briefs well, right? But
Yeah.
everyone in the family, it is the family culture. It's not just something we said.
Yep. It's you set the standard, you live by the standard, right? And don't be offended when your kids get a little bit older and they call out your bullshit on the standard, which has happened to me before with my 7-year-old. And I say, you're right, right? Like daddy shouldn't be doing that. Like I said, I do this and that's not our value. And that you're correct. So yeah, I think is kind of building that identity set is so important, because really, there's so many external factors, right? When our kids go to school, they have like social media, whatever, and like they're gonna try to fit in with something. And so, like, what better way as a dad than to craft that ideal standard, that value set, that identity for them to identify with, right, as the family unit. And so they're not trying to go out and seek validation from other outside sources that they want to try to identify with. And so, hey, my kids are small. Like maybe this blows up in my face when they get older, but I hope not, and I don't think it will. In that they're going to identify as a camp, right, when they start to get older, and they're going to know exactly what a camp is and what a camp does.
Do you tell your kids not to be campy when they tell jokes?
Yeah, I just tell them.
All right, we got our dad joke quota for the episode. Thank you,
Yeah,
Dustin.
good thing your mom's not. Your mom's
You're
not
welcome,
named
everyone
Summer.
listening. We will not be quitting our jobs to do comedy careers.
I wanted to jump in and kind of get us back on track here, because we were discussing realizations, and you mentioned that after you became a father, there was quite a few. So you mentioned a couple, but what were some of the primary realizations that came up after becoming a father that were just kind of life altering, that kind of aha moment, like, oh man, I got to change this, or I've got to do this, that kind of thing? What came up there?
Yeah, so I'll speak on two fronts. On one of being a boy dad, and then one on being a girl dad. So I was a girl dad times two first. So there's a lot of realizations there. And really for me, it was a realization of like, what is my job as a girl dad, right? It's not just to like, support them and love them and comfort them, which like you're going to as a girl dad, right? But like ultimately at the end of the day, my job as a girl dad is twofold. And one of them is to make sure that they are equipped to go out into this world on their own. And that's a tough thing to think about. And that's a tough thing to realize as a girl dad, because you do want to love them, support them, and have them know that daddy is always going to be there. But at the same time, hey, when they're 18 and they move out, I want them to be ready for the world. So it's kind of the dichotomy there, right? Of wanting to be loving, wanting to be supportive, but then at the same time is placing intentional challenges in their way, having tough conversations, and making sure that they are equipped to go out and lead their own lives, right? So that's one. The other realization was my job as a girl dad is to set the example for the type of man that I want her to marry someday. And so that made me take another good look in the mirror about how am I treating my wife? How am I showing up for my wife? How am I supporting my wife? And I'll be the first one to say I'm far from perfect, right? I make mistakes every single day with this, but that was a big realization for me. Was I am setting the example ultimately for the type of man that I want her to marry one day. So if that doesn't, help you shift behavior, like I don't know what will,
Absolutely. Now,
Dude, that's something I've been thinking about for sure.
what's something that you wish you had known before becoming a dad that would have prepared you better for fatherhood?
That's a tough question, man. Because I part of me, is just like, hey, fuck it, let's go live, kind of like the army mentality, right? Like there's, you can read a million books, which I did. And they were great for like understanding how to change a diaper, or like do a burrito swaddle or whatever. But like, it doesn't become real for the dad until like that baby is here. The way that it does for the mom, right? The mom has 9 months, right, to kind of connect with that baby, and they have this emotional bond, this physical bond, for 9 months that you don't have. But that changes the second that child is here, and you're holding it in your arms, right? And so, yes, read all the books you can, right? Try to equip yourself, but ultimately know that like shit's not going to feel real until that baby is here, and you're going to have a dramatic shift as soon as they arrive.
Yeah, I remember hearing my son's, he's my firstborn, hearing his heartbeat in the sonogram. Like I had a pit in my stomach almost immediately. The first beat hit, and I was like, "This is real." Like, we're there. There's no point of return after we are go. And so yeah,
Buckle
it
up.
was, yeah, and it's incredible. It's such a good journey. So
I was
I
going to add
actually.
on that,
Oh, go ahead.
you know, every kid is different. Every dynamic is different. Your situation, people are going to give you all this advice too, and take it all with a grain of salt. But for me, the most beneficial thing was kind of just like, if you've got a rhythm that's working, don't change it. Like, find a rhythm that's working for your little family, especially when it's
Mhm.
your first. And if it's working, just keep doing it. Because I think it's a lot. The temptation is, like you're saying, read all the things, listen to all the things. Then it's like information overload, right? You're
Mhm.
gonna be tired. You're gonna be stressed. It's all new to you. So at some point, one foot in front of the other, right? Back to the F it, do it live kind of mentality.
Yeah.
Sometimes that is the best mentality at times. So
Yeah, and I think too. What would be nice to know ahead of time? I think, like in a very like tactical, practical sense, would be like, what does the first 6 months look like, right? And because to be honest, it's pretty brutal. Like you guys would probably agree, right? Baby's waking up all hours of the night, like you're having to do, the mom's having to feed. If you guys are bottle feeding, you're doing that, like and honestly, the kid wants nothing to do with you for like the first 6 months. And so you have to be very proactive in like, how can you help support the family? Because ultimately the kid's gonna be looking to mom for comfort, for food, and for everything. Right. And so like, what can you do to help? And so, what can you do? Right. You can change diapers. You can wake up and feed a bottle if you're doing bottle feeding. Right. You can pick up the slack around the house to make it a little bit easier for your wife. You can change you can do the laundry, you can do the dishes, you can do the vacuuming, you can do all the things that your wife did before you had a kid, right? Just to make it a little bit easier for her. Because ultimately, like, your job in this first 6 months is to support your spouse
To be
ultimately.
present for
Um,
her. Yeah.
exactly.
yeah, I call it just being the logistics coordinator at that point.
Yeah.
I
Right.
did groceries, finance, I did the house, I did everything. All she did was take care of our kid. And we averaged 3 hours of sleep a night for 8 months because my son had colic really, really bad. And yeah, it can be brutal, but man, is it so worth it?
Yeah. And I would say too is like level set expectations. Like I'm a big fitness guy, right? I like to go to the gym and work out all the time. And life is going to be different when you have kids, especially young children. And so you kind of have to level set your expectations on what you can do and like what your priorities are at the time that you have young kids. Because time's gonna be limited. You're not gonna have like 2.5 hours to go to the gym and do curls with the girls anymore. You're gonna have to figure out a way to get it done, and probably means you're going to get a little bit less sleep. But you're going to have to shift your lifestyle, to really become a parent.
Absolutely,
Justin,
man.
I think you had something right.
Yeah, I wanted to go back to talking about being a girl dad, just because I'm about to hit that milestone. I think that I would like to encourage other dads who are already like a boy dad or just not even a father yet and are about to have a girl. I plan to use this time personally, just because of all the great fathers we've had on the podcast, as a time to kind of improve myself, because I know I fail my wife on a lot of things. And you said a great thing, which is set the example for the man that you want your wife, your daughter to marry. And you also need to start remembering like who you were to your wife, and that's a hard thing, especially when you have a kid, because like you said, that first month is the hardest month of your life, but it gets better week by week, and it's so hard because you're both exhausted. Nobody's doing each other favors because it's new to both of you, and you both don't get sleep, and you don't know to pass it off to one another yet until you have your second kid.
Nobody's
And
doing
I
each other,
think
period,
that's,
which is a bummer too.
yeah. Well, that too, but um, I mean that, and then I just wanted to also say, like, if you're having a girl, something that my father-in-law is a financial planner, and not a lot of guys think about this, but something that you need to do is set a little money aside as soon as you find out you're pregnant with a female, and go ahead and start a fund, because you're going to need a wedding fund. That kid is going to get married one day, and you don't want that to come up and be like, oh well, daddy's broke, sorry. So just two pieces of advice I would want to give is I plan to, one, take that time to better myself for my wife, because I know I have failed a little bit in my first child, just because, like we said, it's being tired, it's not always being there for each other, and not having the same relationship. Everything shifts, like you said, it's different. I can't explain it other than that for new time dads, but just to give a little perspective, I think those are two things that I feel like would greatly help any dad coming into this adventure, especially with a girl. So
All right, Drew, let's move on to Tedco. So, first question, what makes an epic dad?
Oh man. So what makes an epic dad? That's a great question. So I think kind of what we talked about a little bit before, right? An epic dad is someone that really crafts the vision for their family and leads the family, and is going to guide them along the way. So we have four pillars in our company, that we try to help dads with to level up on, and we call it our Elite Four framework. So I would say an epic dad is someone that has these four pillars dialed in, and that's going to be their body, their relationships, their mind, and their finances. And so I would say if you have all four of those dialed in, like you're being an epic dad. But more than that, I think like an epic dad, like this all changed when I had my son. Again, it was a huge turning point for me, right? Because I looked in the mirror and I knew that I was not being the type of man that I want my son to become. And so I did a lot of homework, a lot of research on that as to like, what is my role as a man? What is my role as a father? And it really came down to three like core principles, for me, that like would make an epic dad. And that is, number one is an epic dad accepts responsibility. An epic dad, number two, an epic dad rejects passivity. And then number three would be an epic dad leads courageously. And I'm not going to take credit for those. Those come from a fantastic book, by what's his name, Robert Lewis, called Raising a Modern Day Knight. So if anybody is a boy dad, I would highly recommend picking up that book. And those to me would be like the three pillars that like make an epic dad. Um, and then I think finally an epic dad knows that he needs to surround himself with other men that are going to challenge him. And he understands like the purpose and the intent and really like the power that comes in community, of setting a standard, holding yourself to that standard, and having other men that are going to hold you to that high standard. And so if you distill it all down, right, it's, hey, he accepts responsibility. He rejects passivity. He leads courageously. He is focused on his body, his relationships, his mind, and his finances. And he surrounds himself with a community of men that are going to sharpen his blade.
Yeah, we've talked about that a lot. So I'm really that's awesome to hear that that's one of the pillars of your company, and might be the most important one, honestly, because I think in the modern age, that's kind of, we've gone all over on this topic, but it just seems like modern men, more than any other group of men through history, are more isolated. I don't know all the causes for that, but it's definitely a problem. There's a lot of stats to kind of back that up. So yeah, that's one of the ways that we start combating a lot of the issues that are passed down through generations is not to isolate. So that's pretty good. I wanted to also ask you about kind of what is TEDCO, what's the founding principles for it, and kind of what led you to ultimately get it going in the first place.
Yeah, so TEDCO stands for the Epic Dad Company. So TEDCO, just for short. But like at its core, like we are a 100% natural, 100% transparent supplement company, specifically for dads. And so like our core avatar, like core customer, is like me 3 years ago, right? And like the dad that like looks in the mirror and he's like, I just know that I'm not being the man I'm supposed to be. I'm not being the father I'm supposed to be. I want to step up. And so when a dad raises their hand and they want to go on that journey, like we want to be there to support them. And we support them with supplementation, obviously, right? So along that journey, to get in better shape, to make sure that you are being sound, mentally and spiritually, like we have, supplements to help you on that journey. And then additionally, we have another pillar of the company, which is really around community. And so that's where our 4 pillars come in, right? So our body, relationships, mind, and finances. That's where our Epic Dad framework comes in. That's a 6-pillar framework that we walk guys through on, if you do raise your hand and you want to make some changes, is like, this is the foundation of how you can do that and start becoming an Epic Dad. And so we kind of have those 2 pillars of the company. And then ultimately, like our mission statement is to change the culture by creating more Epic Dads. And so if we can do that, really how we're going to do that is one dad at a time, like on an individual basis. And we've kind of talked about this before, right? But like politically, I feel like everyone is just waiting for somebody to come along and like fix everything, right? And like, oh, we need this savior to come in and
Not gonna
round
happen.
up. Yeah, it's just not gonna happen, man. It's not like we need to understand that like if we want change, we have to affect that change on an individual basis in our own lives. And so like that's what the company is about. It's like we want to change the lives of fathers to step up and lead and become the husbands, fathers, and men they're called to be, one at a time, because we know that epic dads are going to raise epic children, right? So if we future cast, to 3 or 4 generations down the road, right, and we raised epic kids, our kids are going to instill those same values to their children, right? My grandchildren, to my great grandchildren. All of a sudden, that's how we change the tide on culture, right? And so it's a long-term play. And then additionally is if we're able to help the individual dad level up, become more present, become more engaged with his family, that is going to have a cascading effect, not only to his family, but across the community. And so, like, perfect example of this is, like, let's say you're in the grocery store, right? And your kid is 2 or 3 or whatever. And like, as all children do, they throw an epic fit. They want a candy bar or whatever. Right. And so, they're throwing a fit. Like, I want this dad. I want this dad. Like we have 2 options at that point in time, right? Like we can respond, or excuse me, we can react emotionally, like to a 3-year-old child, and give an example to another dad that's looking, right? That like, hey, that's how dads act, right? That's how we respond. I'm doing the right thing. Or we can take the much more intentional approach of responding to our child in a calm, passive manner, calming him down, doing some co-regulation with him, right? And then all of a sudden, the dad that maybe has like, just this just has like a ton of stuff going on in his life that you have no idea about, right? Like he sees that example that you set out in public, and you have no idea what this other dad is going through, right? But by you responding in that manner, that is going to light a fire in that other father to know that, like, man, I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing, right? Like I need to step up and make a change. And so, like, the power of the individual is exponential. And I feel like we delegate this to, our media leaders, to our politicians, to create this change. But ultimately, by us just leveling up as an individual, focusing on our family, getting our house in order, is going to have like huge results on society.
Yeah. It's really passing the buck, right? So many people, if you're not responsible, then you can't be held accountable for the situation around you, right? It's really easy to say, oh, that freaking politician, it's their policies that did this to us. Like, well, is it really? Like, could you do something about it? So I love that, man. I think your mission is like totally aligned with what we're doing with our podcast here in this group here. So I love it, man. With the Tedco, you also have some pretty sweet merchandise, right? So why don't you show off? I'm gonna solo you here for the.
Do you even dad, bro?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you even dad, bro? Awesome.
Yeah. So yeah, we have, like I said, we have 3 kind of verticals of business. We have supplements, we have community and coaching, and then we have apparel. We've kind of been all in on supplements at the beginning of the company, which is great. Like I'm a physical product guy. That's like my background. So I like having a concept in your brain and then like seeing that manifest into reality and like somebody holding their hands and use it and get utility out of it is like the coolest thing in the world to me. It's like, I love the physical product side. But we have recently started in kind of more on community and more on coaching. And that has been incredible. Again, it aligns with our mission of like helping individual dads. And so it gives us the opportunity to like dive in the weeds, like one-on-one with guys, like create transformations, not only physically, right, but really walk them through our Epic Dad framework, have them turn around their life is like in line with our mission, which is awesome. And then the third is apparel, which, hey, it's just cool stuff for dads, right? So cool t-shirts, you know, cool hats, some swag, stuff like that, right?
I'm repping you tonight too. I'm going to show this one off.
Yeah, which one you got, man? Make dads men again. Yes.
Gotta love it, man. I wore this to like a little men's conference thing, and it was a massive hit with literally everyone. So good design. Well done. All right. Seriously though, with the rest of the company, so what is kind of your future vision for where you want to get to? I know you've talked about the 3 branches that you got going now, and I guess also like with the coaching, who is kind of your ideal person? How do they get in touch with you? What's the best way to start that?
For sure. Yeah. So on the supplement side, we have one right now. I'll plug it. I got it right here. So bam, Take-O pre-workout. There it is. So we have one product in the market right now. It's our Take-O pre-workout. And this was a long time in the making. I am not a formulator by trade. I just like supplements. I think my first pre-workout was in airborne school. I took Jack 3D and did 800 push-ups in a row.
I can see sounds on that stuff, man.
That's the most like
it's illegal now, I'm pretty sure. Yeah. But so me and pre-workouts go way back. So I've always been a supplement user, right? And was like, hey, how do we formulate something like specifically for dads, right? That's a little bit different in the market. That like speaks to our core customer, gives them like what they need. So I went down the rabbit hole on this. I think I ordered like 40 different pre-workouts. Just tried all of them. What do I like? What do I not like? We polled our customers. What's most important to you about a pre-workout, et cetera. So we did kind of all the homework. And then because I'm not a formulator, like we work with a manufacturer. Like it's not me like mixing up stuff in my kitchen. Like we work with a like legit manufacturer to create this. And so we launched our version 1 back at the end of 20, or I guess the end of 20. I think it's been a while now. So we kind of launched an MVP product. We got feedback. We made some tweaks to the formulation, the flavoring, and then we launched this one in March of this year. So that one's kind of taken off like a rocket ship. Was really cool. And now we have people asking us all the time, like what's coming next, right? So I probably have about 40 products that we'd like to launch.
Okay.
But
I just say I need my protein. So
hey, we may have something in store for you.
All right.
But we've got about 40 like on the roadmap, right? But near term, we probably got like 5 or 6. And so I'll kind of let you in on like a little bit of inside baseball. So we've got a protein coming.
Heard it here first.
That's right. We've got a protein coming. It's in the works. Excuse me. We've got a multivitamin in the works as well. And then additionally, we've got greens in the works. And then what is the last one we've got in the works? I'll have to pull up our product roadmap. I know those 3 are near term for sure that like we're formulating right now. But at the end of the day, like on the supplement side, we want basically to, when a dad goes on that journey, when he's like, I want to be a better dad. We want to be the go-to brand for supplementation to help on that journey. And so like the first form for dads is like what I always say internally with the company. Right. So that's where we want to go. We want to be like the supplementation provider for dads. And then on coaching and community side. So again, this is new to us, but ultimately we want to get down in the weeds with guys to have physical transformations and have, really like mindset transformations for them to level up. So we've just started on this and we really hone in on the physical aspect because I think it's Bedros Koulian who says that, physical fitness is the gateway drug to personal excellence, which I love, right? Because if we build the discipline that it takes to get into shape, like that is going to cascade across every other area of your life, right? So we start there. So we help guys get, in really great shape and their life improves because of that. And then we also have a community. It's called the Epic Dad Crew that we've just launched here recently. That's really like an accountability group, right? For guys, like we said, iron sharpens iron. And so we've kind of, created that platform for guys to connect, to walk them through our framework, to make sure that they are hitting daily wins and daily targets and daily accountability. that they're stepping up in their areas of their body, relationships, mind, and finances. And so it's a very new vertical for us, but it's growing quickly, which is really cool, and it's having an awesome impact. And then on apparel, who knows, man? Sky's the limit. I'm pretty creative. Killing out with dad slogans. So we'll see where it goes.
I wore the girl dad AF shirt on
Yes.
vacation 2 weeks ago. Yeah, 2 weeks ago, and it was that was also a pretty massive hit. So I love that. I got the sticker too. I put it on like everything. I love being a girl
Justin.
dad. So.
Justin, I'll have to ship you out a girl dad sticker, man.
Yeah, there you go. I think Brandon's got something for you.
Yeah. So, being the founder of a company and whatnot, how do you balance your work life and your family life now with all this going on?
Not well. I probably need to read your book. No, but in all seriousness, like I've tried every technique I think like imaginable because I'm balancing two careers at the time, right? And this company is growing pretty quickly. So I've gotten to the point in the business where I have realized that I'm the constraint in the business, and it's why we're not growing any more than we are. And so that's been a tough pill to swallow because as the founder, like I want to do everything because like I do it perfect, right? So I don't want to like hand off the reins to anybody. So I've had to come to that realization and start thinking about, what does a team look like and how can I outsource some things that should probably not be on my plate. So I think, if you can find someone that does it 80% as well as you do, hire it out. Right. And then go on to more strategic things. And so like that's what I'm going through the growing pains of that right now. And so that's going to give me back some of my time to be a little bit more strategic. And then honestly, like, is what I try to do is have like focused batches of time, a very intentional time. And so like I've got a little timer here, like right here, it's set to 45 minutes. That was from earlier today. It's literally just a kitchen timer, right? But what it does is I remove all distractions and I become very focused on the one task at hand and I get that task done, right? And then I'll move on to the next thing. So I think when we try, like the word balance to me is like, it's, I don't know, there's, I feel like, and Brandon, you may like get offense to this, right? Because you're like, you got a book on balance, right? But like, I feel like balance is something that we try to achieve, but we don't do it well. And maybe that's what the book is about, right? Is like, how do you balance all these things by not being focused on everything at once? And so what I've found that works the best for me is to have, like I said, focused, intense bouts of time to get things done without distractions, and do that task and move on to the next thing. And so, to me, time's limited, right? Like the thing that I will not sacrifice on as much as I can is family time. And so work to me looks like getting up super early, getting a workout in, getting that first batch of time to get my critical task done for the day. That may be like pushing out content, that may be doing a podcast or whatever the case is. And then it goes to transition to regular work, right? And then at the end of the day, kids are down, we have some family time with the wife. And then, I may work from 10 to midnight, right? Just very focused, intentional time. So that would be the big thing around like balance is just being focused on it. And the other thing too will be knowing what to focus on, because there are going to be like key things in your business that drive the ball forward. And there's going to be things that are just fluff, right? And so it's like knowing what KPIs you need to track and what is most important to move the ball forward in your business, because you're ultimately not going to be able to get everything done. Like you're not. And that's just the nature of the beast, So I would say those two things for me is like focus time and then know what to focus on when you're in that time.
It's good you're learning these lessons, not just from business, because it's going to help you a lot as a company commander.
Oh yeah, already. Yeah, it's like, and
that's the first lesson is you can't do it all.
Yeah, and that's the same thing too. Like with my corporate career, right? Like I was I was a merchant, which is ultimately like kind of like a company commander, right? It's like the decision maker, right? It's like all decisions filter through you, and like you're never going to get everything done. You're not, right? And so you have to be able to prioritize like what's important, what can be pushed out a little bit, and what needs a decision right now. And so just that, I guess that exercise of prioritization has been key.
I dig it, man. Kind of a little bit of a harebrained question for you. What do you think culturally is causing men to struggle so much? I think maybe it's the last couple of years, but it seems like there's a big spike in a lot of issues, specifically with men in kind of Western civilization.
Yeah. So
what's causing that?
I have a lot of thoughts on that. We could probably talk for another hour and a half on that.
We'll just do episode part 2 right there. Let's do it.
So, I'm under the impression, and you guys may agree or disagree, that's okay either way if you do. But I'm under the impression that there is a deliberate, intentional attack on masculinity. Again, for a very intentional reason, right? And that is because weak, passive men are much easier to control. And who is controlling us? That's where we can have a debate on, right? But ultimately, in the day, right? If you
George Soros.
yeah, right. If you are being passive, you are being weak. If you don't have sovereignty, you're much easier to control, right? You're dependent on other people. And so I think that is why, right? When you look at our media, when you look at television, when you look at, anything you're seeing, right? I mean, it shows the dad is like the Homer Simpson effect, right? Is what I call it. And so like when you go back and look at movies, in the 80s, 70s, 80s or whatever, the dad was like the hero, right? I mean, he's like super jacked and buff, like he's, making all this money for the family. He's got all the masculine traits, right? Of like we talked about, right? Like leading courageously, accepting responsibility, rejecting passivity. But then now, anytime you see a dad on TV, like outside of Bluey, believe it or not, yeah,
Bandit. That's who I am for
yeah,
Halloween,
Justin
baby.
going.
right. I know it's like
Good
the best cartoon. Outside of that one example, the dad's like a blubbering idiot, right? He has no idea what's going on. The mom has taken control of everything, right? That we have delegated everything to our wives and to women in society. And like that is the reason why, is because weak men are easier to control. And that's a very intentional effort that's going on.
I could agree more, man. That's so on the spot. Like I sat there and thought about that the other day. When's the last time I thought about like seeing positive father figures? Because I was letting my son see, of all things, we were watching Bluey, and then we started watching Airbud, and the kid that didn't have a father figure, and I'm like, when was this movie made? And then I started realizing like you stopped seeing father figures, or you started seeing weak father figures in the 2000s. In the 90s, 80s, and 70s, you saw strong, masculine, get to the chopper,
Kind of started with
those
Al
kind of
Bundy,
guys.
married with
Yeah.
married with children.
And now
right?
it's just like, just passive men. And it's like, no, that's not what a father is. I'm telling you, if you roll up on a father who's a real father and act a fool these days, I'm telling you, you'll realize who those 70s, 80s, and 90s fathers were. And I feel like that's what we need more of. And I couldn't agree more, man. Like it's what they're trying to push, is that men are weak. We're not stoic. We're not, leaders. We're not anything anymore. And if we're masculine, God forbid, we're toxic. At that point, we had that conversation with Nick on our last episode. And it's like, no, there's masculine men, and then there's toxic people. Like there's a complete difference. So yeah, I 100% agree with you, man. That couldn't have been said better, because fathers are just not put in a good limelight anymore.
Yeah, and some of that too, whether or not it's intentional, I think I know I personally brought some of those ideas onto myself. I thought that it was better to be more passive because that's what society told me, and that's what a good husband does. Is he kind of lets his wife lead and takes care of all that stuff. And that's been an interesting process of unlearning that and realizing that leadership is okay as a man. It doesn't make you toxic; it just makes you masculine. And so I think a lot of that is us accepting that, and it's easier, right? You pass the buck. You go, oh well, if my wife makes the decisions, I don't have to worry about it. It wasn't my fault. If something goes wrong, it wasn't me; it was her. So we got to take some blame there too for how some of this stuff has gone down. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Stunning and brave.
It's this woman's fault, Yeah. So yeah, I think we all pretty much mostly agree on what you said, Drew. Other than kind of what you're doing specifically with Tedco, at large, what do you think men need to do about it?
Yeah. So, I mean, kind of what we touched on before, right? I mean, the most important thing that you can do is to level up your own life, right? Like, stop thinking about the broader problem and stop thinking that someone is going to parade in, right? Whether it's a politician or a media figure, and save the day for you. You need to do the three things that we talked about, right? In order to become a masculine man. You need to accept responsibility. You need to reject passivity, and you need to lead courageously. And you need to take a look at yourself in the mirror and ask yourself, especially if you have kids, you're listening to this, hey, am I being the example of either one, the type of person that my daughter wants to marry one day, or am I being the example of who I want my son to grow up as? And so, we need to do those things. We need to stop focusing on, like I said, on the broader picture, and focus on getting our own house in order and making changes individually. Because what's going to happen is you are going to, like I said earlier, is that change that you make in becoming an epic dad is going to have generational impacts, right? To your kids, to your grandkids, to your great grandkids. But then also by acting this manner is you're going to set the example for other dads to follow, right? In the community. And so I would say that those things, right, is really take those principles to heart, guys. It's like this is who you need to be a man. This is who you need to be a good father. Is accept responsibility, reject passivity, and lead courageously.
Yeah, man. That's it. Get to it. So asking now, kind of switch just general father advice. If you could only give one piece of advice to dads, what would it be?
Oh man, one piece of advice to dads. Um,
It's a doozy, man.
that is a doozy. That is a doozy. I would say the one piece of advice would be that no dad is perfect, right? Like everyone is going to make mistakes. Um, and your job, right, is to have the intention to become the best dad you can be, right? To lead your family. And you're gonna make mistakes along the way. Every single dad does. But if your intention is pure and to be the best dad you can be, and your action follows that intention, like you're in the top 1% as a dad. By just being there, showing up, and doing the best you can.
Absolutely, man. And we actually have a question we ask every father, and I want to ask it to you. Um, what is a story or something that you've learned, or just as a father, something that stood out to you, like your favorite memory, core memory, whatever it may be, as a father that you can kind of go into effect with us?
Man, there are way too many that I could probably talk for forever of like core memories. But I'll just highlight one that literally happened I think 2 weeks ago. And so my oldest daughter is 7 now, and any bit of baby that she had is gone. She is a little girl
Yep.
now, which
Yep.
is hard to accept.
Yes.
And so we're in basketball right now. We're doing like I-9 league, which is we're like setting her up because we're gonna play basketball in the winter and it's like more competitive. So we're doing I-9 as like a starter. And all it is like you practice for 30 minutes and you go play for 30 minutes. And so once a week. So pretty low speed. But they have uniforms. And my younger daughter's playing as well. So when she was out on the court and they were playing, my older daughter was practicing on the side. And she was dribbling the ball, practicing shooting and stuff like that. And this vivid, I guess, like future casted vision just like came into my mind, right? Of seeing her playing basketball in high school, and seeing like
Yeah.
the type of woman that she's going to become. It just like I saw it like painted as clear as day. And that to me just really hit home of like, she is growing up so fast. She's 7 now. I'm going to blink and she's going to be 17, in high school. And just knowing that like we just talked about, right? Like I can feel good about myself and how I'm showing up as a dad. And knowing that my intention is pure, that I'm going to make mistakes. But at the end of the day, she knows that I love her, I support her, and I'm proud of who she is, and not me being proud of her is not dependent upon what she does, right? I'm proud of who she is, and she knows that. And that was just a core memory, man, just like burned into my brain. Even though it's a future casted vision, it's just like I'll never forget that.
It's powerful, man. And I mean, that's it ties into what you've been talking about so much too, is like, men, you need to look ahead and you need to realize these things, because if you're always caught in the exact moment, the right now, something's going to catch your family off guard, right? And it's your job. You're the one who has to be keeping your eyes on the horizon, head on a swivel. And it's not all bad things. It's also good things, right? If you're head down, you may miss really great opportunities for your family because you weren't looking ahead and thinking through options. So, um, it's almost like a premonition you had with your daughter, and that's such a beautiful kind of just encapsulates that responsibility we have to have that vision and to be forward thinking, um, not with a negative thing, with a very beautiful thing. So thanks for sharing that, dude. Justin, I think you had one final question, right?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask if you could pass like one thing on to your children or a piece of advice to your children specifically, what would that be for you that you wanted them to know?
Yeah, so there is this one piece of artwork. I'm not sure who did it, but you see it all over the internet. And I think it just speaks like truth to parenthood. And the visual is the dad, is on the right hand side, and I forget if it's a son or a daughter, but it's on the left hand side, and they're puzzle pieces, and kind of a jigsaw pieces, right? And what you see is the dad has these pieces kind of taken out of him that build up the child, right? And the picture is actually of him taking a piece and basically giving that to his son or daughter. And so I think like my advice to them would be like, hey, I am trying to take the best pieces of me, to pass them on to you so you can then go have a better life than I did. So I think that in like a very like, not practical, but kind of like a strategic sense, right? Like that would be the advice, right? Of like, hey, this is what I'm doing to you. This is what your role is with your kids. And then I would say the probably practical piece of advice that I would be think for yourself. And so we get so much pushed down on us, especially these days with social media, politicians, et cetera, that like no one really teaches us like how to think. They teach us what to think. And so I want to really instill, the skills. It is a skill set, the skill set of discernment to my children, and that they know how to think for themselves. They know how to uncover the truth and what's right and what's wrong, and that they need to have the conviction to stand on principle. So that would be a big one for me. Would be teaching them the value of discernment.
It's beautiful, man. It's a great lesson. All right, let's shift to where can people find you. So I'm going to pull up your website, but why don't you go ahead and also just kind of narrate where else people can reach out and get connected with you, and where they can follow you.
For sure. So man, I need to update our website. That's something I got to get off my plate too. But yeah, so the website is just theepicdad.com. You can find out a little bit about our apparel, our supplements and stuff are there. If you want to shop for supplements on Amazon, we've got them there as well. Yeah, a lot of stuff sold out. It's it's just a shitty site. But it'll get better, I promise, guys, as we grow. And then where to
shirt.
Yeah, man, that was the best seller for sure. Where can you guys connect with me? It's just Instagram is the best place. So just at the Epic Dadco on Instagram. I'm very active there on social media. If you guys shoot me a DM, it'll be me responding. I don't have like a team responding for me or anything. Yes, you can connect there. And in our link in bio, we've got, links to all of our resources, right? So whether it's to our community, whether it's to our supplements, whether it's to our podcast, like whatever we have, right, is right there at your fingertips. And like I said, if you want to reach out, I'm more than happy to help. I am not the epic dad, right? That's the ideal that we're all striving towards. So I may not, have an answer for you, but I will search and find an answer for you to help provide value on your journey to being a better father.
I love it, Drew. Well, hey man, I want to just thank you for coming on, being real, being raw. Thanks for being a warrior in our community, not just in uniform, and standing for your principles and kind of living that example. So I think a lot of people can be inspired by what you're doing, and kind of take it and hopefully carry that on in their little spheres of influence as well. So just appreciate your heart for dads and wanting to build better for our kids. And with that, we'll say enough talk, dads. Let's get climbing. We'll see you in the next episode. Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Present Fathers Podcast. Make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Spotify to catch all of our amazing episodes. We will see you in the next one.